There's a job I've been putting off with the Maestro since I got it, and we have some lovely weather at the moment, and if I don't use my materials soon they're going to need to be bought again. So let's get the headlining done. These are the only tools you should need for this job. It doesn't really get that complicated in here. The Maestro is blessed with a moulded sort of cardboardy fibre headlining sort of a thing. A lot of cars this is actually completely trashed and gone. Mine, luckily, the board is pretty good, the fabric's just gone and somebody's painted it at some point. There are a number of Phillips or crosshead screws in the door handles. We've got one in the front and two in the back. Let's see the one in the back there. Driver's side doesn't have a handle, it just has blanking plugs. I might have a spare handle, so I might book the trend and put one in. Usually the reason there isn't one is to stop you knocking your head on it. Sun visors, again, I was trying to figure out what this was. This is the foam inside the sun visor that's been painted. The fabric's gone, but I can put new fabric in. And again, these are just held on with some screws up here, and there's a screw in here for this bracket too. And of course I do have some repair work to do, so when I take this out I'm going to have to be a little bit careful around here. The rear view mirror should be stuck to the windscreen. I have some tape which I think will do that now. It shouldn't be screwed in here like this, so I'm going to try and fix this at the same time and hopefully that will work. But I'm not going to remove this until after I've covered the headlining. That way I can still use the car. I don't need to worry about sorting this out just yet. At the back you have the rubber seal for the boot, for the tailgate, and there's a trim here, a plastic trim. And I'm going to have to be careful with that because I've seen some of these and they're usually snapped. And I'm not sure whether that trim goes on after the fabric and is just attached to the board, or if it goes onto the car. I'll find out when I get this rubber seal off. Happily, because it's a hatchback, I can undo everything inside and then just bring it out through the back of the car. Trying to do this on saloon cars is a bit of a pain, but hatchbacks, it's fairly easy. I'm expecting when I take the sun visors out that it's going to drop the whole headlining on my head. That's fairly standard with these jobs. But let's find out. I'm just going to loosen the ones that hold the hinge for the sun visor first. And then we'll take out the latch here, because that should then prevent there being any stress on the headlining. I don't want to damage this any more than it is if I can help it. Sometimes these clip in, there we go. Yep, and you can see on this there's little tangs there that just hold it in, but if you wiggle it sort of back and forth you can get that out. The other thing we have is a trim clip, but I think that might just be a blanking plug. It's loose there, so we'll just leave that as it is. Right, same deal on the passenger side. There we go. And yeah, this trim clip is just a little bit sturdier. Let's see if I've got a screwdriver that fits it. There we are. So you just half turn these and then it releases. They just have like a little leg on the top of them there. And these are actually flocked, which is interesting. The headlining as well goes over the A-pillar trims rather than under it, which is great. I don't need to take the A-pillar trims off. Let's see how this one comes out. Yeah, it's a little bit glued to the headlining with some paint. This isn't ideal. There we go. These are always fun to try and figure out. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay, so you just have to make sure that the little sprung washer piece there just pops out. This one was, you can see, just a little bit glued on with whatever paint they've used. But so far, headlining is staying up in place. I do feel a bit like that's because it's glued here where it shouldn't be. Yeah, it is a bit. That's not ideal. I don't like that. I'm going to have to be extremely careful with this corner. And probably the same on that one, because it looks like they've actually glued this on, which is not quite right. There we go. You end up bumping your head a fair bit doing this, but the hat helps. Ooh. Here we go, it's going. Right, I'm just going to leave that sun visor in for now and deal with the back, because the last thing I want is the back to drop and it to break something while the front's this loose. I can come back and do this afterwards. So the main thing to remove here is the boot seal, which usually just pulls off. Yep, there we go. You don't need to take the whole thing off, just enough to get to this top. And I can see I've got what look like some fairly flexible plastic thingies. Yep, so if you just push gently up underneath, it unhooks and that comes off. And that's the piece that holds the back of the headlining up. Again, it goes over all of your pillar trims, so I shouldn't need to take any trims out to remove this. So the only thing holding this up now is going to be that front sun visor. I'm fairly certain this isn't going to be graceful or elegant in any way. Well, that came out easy. Right, this corner's glued on, so let's get my screwdriver and deal with that. And there we go. Yeah, I thought that might happen. It's not held on particularly well, and somebody has attempted a repair, so we shall do that better. Right, I shall go around the back of the car and we shall remove this. Well, that went surprisingly well. I'm quite pleased about that. I thought that would put up more of a fight. There's no weight to it at all, and it feels a bit like styrene. I thought this was going to be more like that cardboardy stuff dashboards are made out of. There's a little strip there which helps with soundproofing, just stops it rattling and booming against the roof. I have this corner to glue back on. You can see here as well, this is where that modified rear view mirror has been put in, so I'll need to strengthen that and re-glue that. And this corner also, there's an old repair. So this has been out before, because that's really the only way you'd get in to do that. But overall, that's in pretty good shape, and I can certainly recover that. Now I've got the headlining out, I can do a little bit of inspection in here and look for any potential issues, because there's bound to be some. One of them is the interior light. I wasn't sure what the wiring situation was here. It looks pretty unmolested, but this only works when that door is open. At the moment, driver's door is open and the light is completely dead. But if I open the passenger door, it comes on like it should. So I don't think there's a wiring problem up here. I was also surprised to see the wiring goes that way and down that pillar, I expected it to go this way and down this pillar. So the problem is probably in that little door switch down there, and I'll investigate that before we put the repaired headlining back in. You can see here where the glue, or the paint that was glue, has caused problems, and it's the same over this side, but overall the roof in here looks okay. I don't see any glaring issues at the moment. There is a little bit of surface rust going on up here. It's a little bit hard to show you, but again, it's more sort of a condensation thing that you get with cars. It's not something I'm going to worry about massively. Remember, when I got the car, it was very, very damp in here because it had a water leak problem, which I've only mostly solved. All down those sides looks pretty good too. That went an awful lot smoother than I expected, which is good. It means the job's not going to be as stressful as it might have been. I don't really have anything to do in here, which is fantastic. I'm really relieved about that. All of the little plastic things, the whatnots up there that hold the handles, they're all present and they seem to be in good condition. Obviously there's none over the driver's door, but then there wouldn't have been from new anyway, so I'll not worry about putting a handle in there. I'll just put some blanking plates or similar into that gap. This job has gone surprisingly easy so far, which is always a little bit suspicious. The damage on the board is very minor. What there is are some dents like this, which may show through when I cover it in the fabric. There's not a great deal I can do about that, unfortunately. But the more serious damage was the cracks on the corners, and of course this side that had broken off completely. And there were a couple of cracks up here where the rear view mirror is, because of how they've put the rear view mirror, which should just be the interior light in this hole, and then there shouldn't be anything pushing on the board. But because of that bracket they've put in, it's pushed this out and cracked it. To repair this, all I've used is some good old UHU, or Yoo-hoo glue, which is just, it's fantastic stuff, and loaded up the cracked sections, squidged them together, and used a bit of tape just to hold everything in place and to protect the clothes pegs from the glue. Pop the pegs on just to hold everything where it needs to be, and that will do for repairing the board. We don't need to get any more involved than that on this board, because once you put the fabric covering on, that will act as a bridging material, and that will hold all these cracks together. Then when it's in the car, of course, all of the trims that hold it in place and the shape of the car will prevent it getting damaged any further. Everybody has their own way of doing this job, so what you're seeing here is less a tutorial, more my way of doing it. I prefer to do it outside if I can, just because of any potential fumes. Breezes can be a little bit annoying, but this fabric's fairly grippy, this surface is fairly grippy, so we're doing okay. Elevated platform, so just the dining table, just to make it a bit easier on your back. And the first thing that I do is I work out roughly where the middle of the board is and the middle of the fabric. Once I know that, lay the fabric onto the board the way round you want it to be. So this is the back of the fabric and this is the face of the fabric that you will see when it's in the car. Then the side that you're not gluing first, fold it into the middle, and afterwards the side that you are gluing, fold it over the top, so you end up with this sort of sausage roll thing. Once you've done that, you can then put your spray adhesive, and I'm using this stuff which I got off eBay somewhere. I hope it's still good. It's been sat on my shelf for a little bit longer than perhaps it should. So we go down the middle with the spray adhesive on the board and on the fabric. Let that flash off and then glue them together, since this is a contact adhesive, and that will give you your starting point. Don't try and glue the whole board all at once. You're going to give yourself nightmares if you do. If you do it this way, glue down the middle, and then you spray adhesive this side and this side where the fabric is. Once that's flashed off, you work from your center line and roll it out towards the edge. Don't worry about wrapping your edges or anything, that comes afterwards. Because this is moulded, it can be a little bit more difficult, but this is a padded fabric, so it has the foam built into it. Can be a little bit more forgiving. I'm not going to talk through the process on this one. You do have to be fairly quick as you do it, and I'm just going to set the camera up and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it goes as smoothly as usual. If it doesn't, well, we've got some decent YouTube drama, haven't we? Well, with the exception of picking up some dirt from the back and putting some fingerprints on it, that went quite well. Now, to be able to finish the edges, I need to trim off some of this excess fabric. Good sharp shears, and you don't want to cut right to the edge of the board. Leave yourself a bit of a gap, a bit of a hem, and then it makes it a bit easier if I need to peel anything back and re-stick anything, which I should be able to do at the moment, but I won't be able to do in a little while. So you can see when you trim it back, a couple of fingers width is usually about right, and it means areas like this corner here where I've not quite pushed it in quite right, I can fix that now. Because all of this area here where there's a lot more contours is harder to get right. Once you're satisfied that the visible side of it is all nicely glued down, and I'm as satisfied as I can be right now, you want to trim everything back so that it's no more than 2 fingers widths and no less than 1 finger's width all the way around, because you need some overlap on these. Different cars do vary, so if you've got one already on the car where you can look at it and how they did it, copy that. For tight radiuses like this, it's best to snip in towards the board, don't quite meet it, because when you fold it, it will then stretch around that corner much better. Don't be tempted to cut out all of your holes. It's best to do this with a knife once it's actually fitted back on the car, because then you can make sure that the holes are in exactly the right place. These corners, for example, which are quite badly damaged on mine, will need a small hole for that spring on the sun visor, but I don't want to punch that through because this is a much larger hole and I don't want to go through the wrong part. Same with the interior light slot here. I'll probably only cut a slot big enough for the wiring to go through. I might have to cut the hole bigger. We'll see when it's in the car and how that actually slots in. So once you've gone round and you've done all of the clipping that you need to do and it's all trimmed, we do the same thing with the glue. Just spray this edge, let it go off, and then glue it down. And with this one, with how quick this is flashing off today, I reckon if I start here and go all the way around the board, by the time I get back to the start, we'll be ready for sticking it down. can't put this back in the car yet. The bond on the glue needs some time to get stronger, according to the instructions anyway. So we're going to leave this overnight just to make sure that everything cures and chemically bonds properly, and then tomorrow, or sometime, it will go back in the car. If I try and fit this back in the car now, I run the risk of breaking some of the glue bonds or weakening them, and then I'll have to do it all over again. So it's sometimes best just to give it a little bit of time and just wait. Time for another hurry up and wait job. I've unscrewed the mirror bracket that had been put in by a previous owner, which is down here, and the bracket was screwed to the car, and then there were these two nubby little screws which went into the mirror itself, the arm. But the arm is supposed to be glued to that little square on the windscreen. I have got this, which is a very, very strong tape, and I've used this to stick things onto walls instead of using picture hooks. It's quite good. Not sponsored, this is just who supplies it, but the application on it is a little bit involved. So since I can't do much of anything tonight, I'm going to give this a go, stick some on the windscreen, on the little square up there. We're going to use some of this to clean everything off, stick the tape on the windscreen, and then tomorrow that'll be cured enough that I can hopefully stick it onto this mirror. Now the only problem is it does say not to put any weight on the bond until it's kind of fully done, so I'm probably going to have to double this up with some gaffer tape or something just to keep the thing attached, because I can't really take the arm off the mirror as far as I know. But we'll see, we'll give it a go, and it'll either work or it won't. With the headlining all glued, it's time to do the Sunvisors. I thought that this might be sandpaper or something because that's what it feels like, but no. This is actually the original fabric, and this is the foam layer. So the fabric that would cover this has all gone away, usually due to sun damage, and then it's been painted white, which gives it this unique texture. I need to put a new fabric insert in these to match the headlining, and as you can see with the other side here, this isn't even close to the same colour. I do know that they did originally have a slight difference between the grey of the plastic and the grey of the fabric. We're not going to worry about it. As long as these inserts match the rest of the headlining, it will be fine. Very simple construction on these. When they're originally made, let's see if I can show you on the edge. Can you see there's just sort of this edge here? The fabric is heat bonded to the vinyl. Now, I can't do that. I shall have to do that with some glue. But first of all, we need to get this old foam out. And it comes out in little chunks like this. The other side came apart quite a bit easier than this, but I shall persist. There we go. Enough up, I can get the cardboard insert out. Right, I don't know whether this is original, this cardboard insert piece. I've got a feeling that something very similar to this was used originally. I need to get all of this off. I don't have any cardboard like this in at the moment. But this cardboard's fine, it just needs all the foam stuff taking off. And then I've got to work around and just unpeel all of the old fabric in here until these are all nice clean surfaces. There is another layer of foam in here as well. If I've got enough of this headlining material that I've used, I think I'm going to replace this foam with that, because this foam's gone very brittle and it just looks a bit saggy. So once I've cleaned all that up, we'll then cut a new insert, as I've done on this one. And what I still need to do here is glue all these edges down, but I do want to make sure all of this is cleaned first, because it looks okay on camera, but I know it could definitely be cleaner, and now is the perfect time to do that. When you cut out this insert piece, best thing to do is just get your pen and go around the edge, and then you want to just squidge it in, and you'll find this end where it's a bit more complicated. You'll probably have to shave back the corners a little bit, so fit, trim, that sort of thing, until you are done with it. I'm going to clean this up, and because I know these are mirrored, I'm going to use this piece as a pattern for the other side, because that will just make things easier for me. And I'm going to bring you back when I've done some cleaning and peeled this horrible stuff off and got pieces ready to glue together. I've got this all cleaned and stripped out, and I've got all my pieces cut out, and happy days, I found some cardboard. Only problem is it's a bit thicker than what was in there before, and I've already put one of them together and I know that it's okay. I did decide to go ahead and replace that old foam that was in here. It was very brittle, and I've just cut out a piece of leftover headlining material because it's a suitable sort of thickness, and that piece goes in first. You need to pop that in underneath the steel frame that's inside here. Now, I haven't bothered to paint this steel frame inside here, one because that would be very difficult, and two because it's not really necessary. There's no signs of any corrosion on here of concern, and I don't think it's going to get any worse. I mean, it's been in here for getting on 40 years, and I don't think we're going to have any problems there. I think that will be fine. So that goes in first. Then your cardboard, and that wants to go over the frame. If we're copying the construction as was. Bit fiddly to get around all these corners. There we go. And you want to sit this in so that the actual edges of the frame are where the cardboard is. The cardboard is actually smaller than the foam that goes in. And then we have our top layer. And this fabric picks up every single bit of fluff and hair and old foam that sat on my carpet from destroying the old material. But it does vacuum off alright, and if it's really stubborn you can get it with a bit of tape. Let me just finagle this in all these little gaps. This is slightly larger than the cardboard, so your goal is just to sort of, as evenly as you can, squidge it down so that it overlaps the cardboard and the frame inside here and goes underneath the plastic. Now, when these were made, looking at them, the fabric and this vinyl on this side would have been bonded together in one go, probably in a stamp press or that sort of thing. And this side would have been made separately, whole lot laid down and then stamped out again with a heat seam on this edge. I don't have any of that sort of gear, so we're doing it this way. You can, if you want to, glue this onto the cardboard inside. I'm opting not to. I'd rather it have a little bit of movement in here because of how everything works and fits in the car. And now for the fiddly messy bit. I'm going to use a stand, in this case my bin. I'm using Yoo-Hoo glue for this. It's just great, it's very versatile. Also, if I need to undo this, with a little bit of effort you can actually get it off the plastic, so that's good too. When you glue, don't glue on the fabric side, glue on the plastic side, if possible. and that should give you a neater bond. And don't go all the way around in one go, because I'm going to glue and then peg. This one's the tricky one because of where it is. You don't need very strong clamps for this. You want something that's actually a little bit on the weak side, which is why clothes pegs are great, because you don't want to end up with like a crimped edge. And this will just glue the vinyl onto the foam. And then just work your way around whichever direction you feel like going. I found it was best to start here because that's the most deformed bit of the plastic, and just do a section at a time. Also, don't forget, when you're not using this, stand it up. I always use a little pot because otherwise the glue just oozes out everywhere and it's a mess. Ooh, I don't have very many pegs here. I thought I had more than this. More pegs is always best. I'm going to steal some off the other visor because it will be dry by now. There we go. We'll leave this now for an hour or so, take all the pegs off, and that should be ready to go in the car. All the pieces ready to refit. Got the sun visors all finished. They look pretty good. And the headliner as well, of course. The only thing that I've put in so far on the headliner are these little locking buttons which have the L-shaped legs on the back. The reason for that is these will help me hold up the front of the headlining as I install it, which is going to be the next job. There's a bit of a breeze today, so I'm going to have to be a bit quick getting this in. I have managed to misplace my replacement ones of these, so I'm going to have to put the old ones on, which I didn't want to do, but I've put the replacement ones somewhere safe, which is always a terrible thing to do. They'll turn up, and when they do, I'll fit those too. One thing I've immediately gone and done is put some fingerprints straight on it, because I'm still getting black smuts off the board on the back. Oh well, they do brush off. At the front, these little legs go into the little square there with the white paint around it, but before I do that I've got to cut a large enough hole to feed through the interior light. I'm actually going to unplug this so I can cut the smallest hole possible, and then I'll widen it out once everything's in, because I'll get the nicest finish that way. Minor correction, these little leg things here don't go in that square, they actually go on this lip up here, which sort of does make more sense, makes them a little bit easier to locate, I guess. I'm going to have to do that before I do the wires, because I'm on my own. I don't have a second pair of hands to help me prop everything up, so I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do things. So I'm going to try locking those in and locking the back trim on and see if that helps. Little tricky to record, which is why I hadn't. But yeah, that's in. Just make sure when you put the headlining in, you push it far enough forwards. It goes a little bit further than you might think. And once these are latched up here, it actually holds the front end quite nicely. Got the wires through, so I will deal with cutting this hole big enough for the light fitting in a bit. Always leave things like this till last. Get everything secured first. That way you'll get a much nicer finish. Hopefully doing the back of this is going to be as easy as it was taking it out. Watch your head, Garfield. It just sits up nice and snug there. And then this should just neatly hook over everything. That's already looking a load better, and we've only very loosely got it in. So I've got a little bit of cleaning ahead of me where I've put some smudges on the cloth, but overall I'm happy enough with that. Now then, next thing, probably best to do the sun visors, because they'll hold the front end in nicely, and then we'll move on to doing the handles. Unlike the front handle there, when you do the back ones you have a little bit more wiggle room, and you can actually just pry the edge down like this, and that allows you to get in and feel around for where the little plastic brackets are that you need to screw into and where the slot is in the fabric. So once you've figured out where the slot is in the fabric, if you can't feel it from this side, by just levering this edge out, you can then cut a slot, and it just allows you to peel the fabric back far enough to access those screws. Don't be tempted to cut the whole thing out, you don't need to. And then you can screw in here, your handle will squish down into the fabric and give you a really nice finish afterwards. Just like on this side. Now unfortunately this one is missing the end cap. They're all very sun damaged and very brittle, and the little coat hook things that go on there have both snapped and come off. But that's not the end of the world, I never use them anyway. For the interior light, it's probably the most awkward bit of trimming you'll have to do, because you don't want to cut any fabric away. So first of all, cut a slot to get your wires through, but then you want to try and cut sort of like a, I don't know what shape you'd call it, it's sort of like a line in the middle and then a little arrow that way and a little arrow that way, and you want to take these out to the corners of the hole, and that will allow this to actually go in the gap. But you just have to keep going until everything fits. I can't do this one-handed. And eventually everything will go in nice and snug. Now your fabric that you're using here actually helps to wedge this in place and prevent it rattling. So again, don't be tempted to just trim all this away. You do want to leave some of it in there, and there shouldn't be that much that it causes you a problem anyway. And there we go. Nice and snug, doesn't rattle about, fits in there just right. The only problem I now have to resolve with this light unit is why it's only working on the passenger door, but I think that's a job for another day. I'm going to quickly wipe off all the little smuts I've put on here, give this a clean, and then I shall show you the finished product. I'd say that turned out pretty nicely. Tolerated being vacuumed as well, without any ill effects. I also learned that all of the grab handles were on upside down, so we fixed that. I am missing a couple of the end caps on the grab handles, which is a shame, and I'm missing one more than I was because the vacuum cleaner decided to eat one, so I'll have to go and rescue that later. I've taken this out for a quick drive, and I'm happy to report that not only does it look nicer, not only are the sun visors nicer to use, it's also a lot better on the squeaks and rattles and vibrations. So many of them are gone, and it just makes the whole experience of being in the car that much more pleasant. I have no idea how well this is going to work, because the tape I'm using to put the mirror on does say not to put any weight on it. That's kind of unavoidable. So I have got some duct tape, and I've already applied this to the mirror itself because that's hopefully going to go on the windscreen. And I've peeled the backing off here, and I can't do it on camera because I don't have enough hands, but I need to press this onto there, and I've cleaned the surface already before this tape went on with isopropyl alcohol, same on the mirror. Press it on, hold it for 10 seconds minimum, and then I've just got to hope that this black tape's going to be strong enough. Everything is very, very hot at the moment. That might help. It might hinder. Let's find out. That's the instructions followed as well as I can manage. And now I just need to leave this until tomorrow. And hopefully it'll be good enough. Well, it didn't immediately drop off, so that's something, but there is a little bit of movement in it. I don't know if that's the tape or what, but I've got it roughly set where I need it, and I'm just going to take it on a test drive and we'll see if it stays attached. Hopefully it does. Nope, still attached. Still good. Yep, that's the cooling fan. At least I know it's working. That's something. Potholes. Oh, I'm glad to see that the cooling fan is doing its job properly. I think we can call that one fixed. And we are home. For now at least, that Stas tape, I assume that's how it's pronounced, is good enough. And that's all we're about here.